It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to another thought provoking session of the Brain Gain Expertise series organized by the Accounting Standards Board of the ICI. We truly value your participation as we turn our focus today to a subject of growing relevance in financial reporting, accounting of intangible assets, and impairment of assets. This 15th webinar of the series reflects our ongoing endeavor to strengthen professional knowledge and foster clarity on complex accounting topics. In today's session, we will explore the practical aspects of identifying, recognizing, and valuing intangible assets, along with the nuances of amortization, revaluation, disclosure requirements, and impairment testing under Ind AS. Through real life illustrations and implementation guidance, the discussion will highlight frequent challenges faced in practice and provide clarity on how to ensure transparency, consistency, and compliance in financial statements. We are privileged to extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed speaker for today's session, CA Shalabh Hajelaji. Before we move into the technical discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's webinar, CA Archana Bansal. Shri Asna Bansal is a chartered accountant and is currently working as a finance manager in the aviation sector. She also holds over 4 years of prior professional experience across FMCG and financial services industries. With this, I would request Ashna Bansal ma'am to address the webinar and give a brief introduction of our eminent speaker, CA Shalabh Hajelaji. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. I truly appreciate the kind words and the warm introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session. Today's session is focused on accounting for intangible assets and impairment of assets. When we consider intangible assets, it is very evident that it often gets overlooked, with more focus being put on property, plant, and equipment, since it's easier to track and measure something that is physical with substance, more so with manufacturing companies always having been in focus. However, with the rapid growth that we are seeing today in technology and service-based companies in India, intangible assets like brands, patents, software, licenses are becoming increasingly important since they represent the core value drivers for business. We see companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, where more than 90% of their enterprise value is driven by intangibles. Equal criticality comes in for startups where ideas, research and development, patents, brand value are a foundation basis which investors also assess these startups. As the world becomes increasingly digital and with the advent of AI and technology, we can only expect the importance of intangible assets to keep growing. Hence, the timing of the session comes at a very good time. Intangibles also becomes very critical when we see mergers and acquisitions. For instance, when Microsoft acquired LinkedIn for 26 billion US dollars, 59% of the purchase price was allocated to goodwill and 30% to other intangible assets like customer relationships, brand name, technology platform. While in technical guidance on this topic comes from India's, quite a lot of questions come in on how can we apply the standard to practicality and recognize intangible assets. How are research and development costs recognized when it comes to intangible assets? Is there any recognition criteria that comes in for each of these cost types? What are the practical factors that indicate asset impairment? How are software or license costs considered in real life scenarios? What level of judgment is involved in accounting for these intangible assets? To guide us through these questions, this topic, and its nuances, we are fortunate to be joined by Mr. Shalabh Hajela, sir, who, in his rich experience of more than 7 years post qualification, has worked in multiple industries in financial reporting and taxation domain. He has worked as a consultant in the accounting advisory domain of Big Fours and also been an active speaker and scholar of accounting standards and has conducted seminar and sessions for various branches of ICAI, including international branches like ICAI Toronto, various corporates and colleges. Before I hand it over to Shalabh sir, participants, please feel free to ask your questions. We will cover them at the end of the session in the Q&A section. Shalabh sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, a very good afternoon to all the viewers. I would like to appreciate Rahul, sir, for starting the session. Thank you to Ashna for setting such an amazing context of the session. Makes my job really easy. And of course, to Accounting Standard Board of ICAI for conducting such valuable sessions. So, starting with our discussion, Today I shall be discussing the intricacies around intangible assets and impairment. And the discussion, what I'll try to do is include a couple of use cases, case studies, real life scenarios that we see around us, so that we can not just learn the concept, but also see how it is applied in real life situations. Uh, as explained by Ashna in her introduction, that intangible assets in past 5 years have seen a significant increase in the overall assets that a firm has. Now, earlier intangible assets were limited to, let's say, software, a specific know-how, or goodwills. But now, with the technology coming into play, a major chunk of assets are in fact intangible assets for companies, big companies which are in service sector, which are app-based aggregators, service providers. The companies are going kind of light on the property, plant, and equipment kind of assets, the fixed assets, and more acquisition is being done on intangible asset, be it through mergers and acquisitions where goodwill is acquired, be it through technology, be it through patented or copyright researches, be it through AI-based technologies, be it through apps, websites, softwares, you name it. And there is a very high chance that even if to all the viewers, if you're working in a industry or a consultancy, or you're having your own practice, there's a very high chance that either your client or the company that you're working for will definitely have a good chunk of intangible assets on that balance sheet. So whenever we start any discussion on any accounting standard, the first concept is to learn about the scope, of course, right? To which all transactions or to which all elements is this standard applicable on. So as we are talking about intangible assets, Ind AS 38 covers the intricacies around intangible assets, and it is applied to all the intangible assets except what has been mentioned in the standards. For instance, financial assets. Now, financial assets have a separate dedicated set of standards, which includes Ind AS 100, Ind AS 32, 107, 109. So intangible assets accounting is not applicable to financial assets. Financial assets, for the sake of quick understanding, are basically such assets which are supposed to be settled either in cash or in equity shares of an entity. Basic example, debtors. We expect our debtors to pay us, right? So those are financial assets. Those are outside the scope of intangible assets. Exploration and evaluation assets. Now, this is a very niche specific, discussion, because under Ind AS, which is a upgrade over our Indian GAAP, Ind AS 106 is a dedicated standard which talks about exploration and evaluation assets. Now, quite a few intangible assets are generated during this exploration and evaluation. These costs are incurred, be it for topological studies, be it for geographical studies. It is basically to understand that whether this particular site is relevant for extracting out the resources or not. So all those expenditures done which are capitalized are treated as per the technicalities of Ind AS 106 and not Ind AS 102. Right? Similarly, for the third point, the very explanation is relevant. Right? So largely only a niche, a particular niche, be it exploration, evaluation, or financial assets, is outside the scope of intangible assets. Rest all is covered in intangible assets. Treatment which is given in India is study and treatment what that is applied over a general treatment given in India's 38. Now let's study for example. Now, employee benefits. So there are certain assets which arise from intangible from employee benefits. Now those are assets. Those are intangible because we. So let me just ask you a basic question before we deep dive into technicalities. What is an intangible asset? Simple question. Like we don't need to go very technical about it. What is an intangible asset? So to kind of, understand the definition, so there are two elements here. One is intangible and the other one is asset. Now, intangible is something which you cannot touch, which does not have a physical substance, right? You cannot touch it, you cannot feel it, it does not have a physical substance of its own. What is an asset? An asset is a item which is of some value to the company, and you are expected to derive benefits out of that particular item in upcoming years. For upcoming years, you are expected that this particular item will help you in your economic activities. That is what an asset, a very simple definition, not a bookish definition. So that means intangible asset is something which is not physical in nature. We cannot touch it, but of course, its existence is going to give economic benefits to the company for upcoming years, right? So intangible assets which are held by an entity in ordinary course of business. Now,
We'll just give a minute for Sir to join back. I think he's facing an internet issue.
sincere apologies to the viewers. There was a sudden internet issue. I hope the voice and the video and the screen is now clear to everyone. Ashna and Rahul,
Yes, sir.
can you?
Yes.
All right. So sincere apologies as I'll continue from the discussion where I believe the connection went a bit off. So I was basically discussing about how a software is an intangible asset for most of the companies, but for a company like TCS, which deals in providing softwares, it is an inventory, right? It is something that they sell in ordinary course of business to earn their revenue. And that is how intangible asset becomes inventory for them and is outside the scope of Ind AS 30. Certain non-current intangible assets which are classified as held for sale in accordance with Ind AS 105 are again outside the scope of Ind AS 38 regarding their treatment. And why? So let me tell you, so this is a dedicated standard which talks about such assets, be it property, plant or equipment, or be it intangible assets, which are considered as held for sale. I mean, those assets are not yet sold, but because of certain conditions getting satisfied, which is discussed in detail in that standard, these assets are now considered that they are, held by the entity, but they're up for sale. So there is a separate treatment and not just considered an intangible asset where substance takes over form, where we study this, that whether a software is coming in some form of a physical substance, be it a laptop, a hard disk, or compact disk, right? Is the physical substance of more relevance and software is just a part of it? Or is it the software is of a major relevance and physical substance is just a medium to carry it, right? So that is how these decisions are made. So in determining whether an asset that incorporates both tangible and intangible elements should be treated under India 16, property, plant or equipment or intangible asset, an entity uses judgment, as I was telling you, to assess that which is more significant, which part is more relevant, right? Computer software for a computer controlled machine cannot operate without a specific software, right? That it becomes property, plant and equipment. So similarly, this judgment would need to be applied that a software like Microsoft Office will not be an intangible asset in a books of accounts because there the laptop, the physical device is of a major substance. On the contrary, a software access like Oracle, SAP, right, will be an intangible asset for us in spite of being run on the same system. So this is how the process goes ahead, right? So let's now understand how is intangible asset identified. Are there some characteristics of an intangible asset? How do we figure out if a particular asset is an intangible asset? So here are a few characteristics of an intangible asset. Identifiable non-monetary asset without physical substance. So why non-monetary? Because if they are monetary, then that would constitute them as a financial asset, which we just studied in the scope, that financial assets are outside the scope. Monetary asset means the asset which we expect will fetch us money. Now you can be like, sir, I'll set intangible assets and I'll fetch money. No, not that way. Their primary reason, the primary purpose of their existence is getting money, right? So, for instance, a debtor, right? A debtor will you expect debtor to come back and give money to you, but that is not the case with your fixed assets, your intangible assets. That's why identifiable non-monetary assets without physical substance, which are of course controlled by an entity. So they have to be controlled by an entity. Of course, for any asset to be considered as an asset, it has to be under the control of an entity. This is pretty simple. And existence of future economic benefits. So this is very aligned to what a general asset under property, plant and equipment would be. The key differentiation is only basically it's non-monetary and without a physical substance. That is what an intangible asset is. Now, a few examples of intangible assets. So I've tried to create certain buckets of what type of largely 5, 6 buckets are for an intangible assets, and then a couple of examples for each bucket. So let's talk about contract based. What is a contract based intangible assets are something that we have an economic benefit for upcoming years. It brings us benefit, we control that, and it is without any substance. So if we study about contract based intangible assets, labor agreements, franchisee agreements, employment contracts, operating and broadcasting rights, like we see with IPL and with the World Cup rights of Indian cricket, they go for some 1,000 crores, right? So what is the company acquiring? Like for instance, what is a Geo company which is having the broadcast rights of an IPL tournament is acquiring? Is that something physical? No, it's not physical at all. It's the right that for next 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the contract is, they are contractually under a right to showcase, and only they'll be having that exclusive right to show the matches or the highlights or whatever. So these are the examples of contract-based intangible assets. Then there are also marketing related, intangible assets like trademarks, internet domain names, non-competitive agreements. Internet domain names and trademarks are basically very, I would say, very famous examples of marketing related. Where, for instance, if I want to start a cold drink named Coca-Cola, I can't do that because there's a trademark taken for that brand of Coca-Cola, right? It's an intangible asset. It has a goodwill of its own. No one can start doing it on their own. Similarly, internet domain names. I can't buy a google.com, right? Because it's an internet domain name that Google only possesses, and now it is an asset for them. Customer related. Now, customer lists, internet domain names, non-contractual customer relationships. Now, you'll be like, say, internet domain names was also covered in marketing related. So this is kind of covered in the both the heads. That's why I'm writing it. Major example of customer related intangible asset is customer lists. Now, as you guys would have, as all the viewers would have noticed, like in some past few years, whenever we go to any supermarket or any largely manage shops and stuff, they always ask for our phone number, they always ask for our name, right? Of course, that's their way of managing a customer list as well, but then that is an asset for them because that not only helps them generate business in future, they can also sell it in future, right? Customer lists, know-hows are sold, so that is also an intangible asset. Artistic related, now music work, pictures, photographies, right? Literary works are all intangible assets. Where if I have written an article, I own the copyright for that, then that is an intangible asset form. Now, the very, very famous technologically based and with current, you know, with current AI thing coming into place, with current robotic process automation coming into place, a good topic for discussion, maybe for some other session. Technology-based intangible assets will see a very significant rise in the financial statements of most of the companies, where the technology is patented, where your app is patented, your website, your computer softwares, the database, the information that you have on servers are all intangible assets, right? So I really hope that all these examples are of good relevance to you. Now let us understand how an intangible asset needs to be identified. Again, what are the characteristics? Or when can I say that this intangible asset deserves a place in my financial statements? I can capitalize this, right? It is separable. So this is one key characteristic, that it is capable of being separated or divided from the entity and sold, transferred, licensed, rented, or exchanged either individually or together with a related contract, identifiable asset or liability, regardless of whether the entity intends to do or so. A little technical, aspect, but let me give you a very simple example. Let's say a company, your company, whichever company you work for or you own or the practice you run, your company has exceptional employees. The directors, the top management, the middle management, the field workers, everyone is exceptional in their capabilities, and they are, they are better than the competitors. They are better than the competitors. Now, my question to all of you is that an asset for the company? Is that an intangible asset for the company? And can company identify this intangible asset? I know you guys cannot like chat or talk to me, but of course, I'm asking you this a question. Answer yourselves. I can hear you. I know. We are connected. Right? See, in spite of being a privilege or edge over your competition, which is giving you economic benefits, the issue is it is not separable from your employees. Now your employees are good, they are more productive, but you cannot separate the productivity and your employees and sell productivity in the market or license it or exchange it or rent it. Right? That is why those things are not classified as intangible assets. And it even if it arises from a contractual or other legal rights, regardless of whether those rights are transferable or separable from the entity. Right? Example, license not transferable except sale by an entity as a whole. Now let's say I have acquired, let's say Geo has acquired a license or let's not say Geo. Let's say any channel has a license to show a particular movie. Let's say Netflix has acquired a license to show a particular web series or movie for as long as it wishes to. However, it cannot be sold. It cannot be, Netflix cannot sell it to some other that right to some other OTT platform. Those are not transferable except only when a particular OTT firm sells its entire self, like the firm is getting dissolved or the company is getting dissolved. Only then they are being capable of being sold, but not other than these. So these are few key aspects, a few important characteristics of an intangible asset that is, something that we need to check. And as I when I was starting the session, I kind of promised you guys that we'll try to make this a session as use case oriented as possible. So here I am with few examples. Now there's an example here. Alpha Limited has been operating a strategic consulting business for a decade. Through its services, the company has gained a customer market share of 40%. Now, Alpha Limited wants to recognize this market share as an intangible asset. Now let us instead of jumping on to the conclusion and answering it, let's try to apply the principles that we have learned. Okay, is it giving me some sort of economic benefits? Okay, this is giving me some sort of economic benefits. I have a 40% market share. Is it something which is non-monetary and without any substance? All right, this is non-monetary without any substance. But can I sell this market share? Can I sell this market share separately? Can I lease it, license it? Can I sell it on my own whims and fancies? Can I do this? No. It will not meet the definition of intangible asset, as it is neither separable nor contractual nor a legal right that can move to another company. So I don't control this, right? There was another important characteristics of an intangible asset, that you control it. Same logic applies on your employees' performance. Though your employees are performing exceptionally well, but you don't control that. You cannot sell it, lease it on your own wish. That is why that is not an intangible asset. So always remember to apply these principles whenever there is a doubt that a particular line item deserves to be an intangible asset or not, a particular element deserves to be an intangible asset or not. We check for these characteristics, and one of the very important characteristics that I just discussed is control. So let's deep dive and understand what control is. An entity controls an asset if the entity has power to obtain future economic benefits flowing from the underlying resource and to restrict the access of others to those benefits. Simple question on this line. Is your license to Chat GPT? You can use Chat GPT for your office work, for your business, or any AI, open source software for your. I'm not asking for subscription currently. I'm just saying that there is open source software, Google Gemini or a Chat GPT or a Claude or whatnot, and you are using it for improving your company's performance. Is it an intangible asset? See, it's giving you economic benefits, but you cannot restrict access of others to those benefits, right? So the capacity of an entity to control future economic benefits would normally stem from legal rights. Now, some of the big consulting entities, some of the big fours and the accounting firms and other industries have, as well, they have made their own in-house AI based chat based softwares. Now, for them, it is an intangible asset because they have the control. They can restrict the access. Right. So for that matter, if any company, any industry has made a chat AI based chat bot or any such stuff, which if it qualifies under other aspects as well, which we'll be studying in research and development, then we can say that we have the control not only to use it, but to also restrict the access to others. So that is an important characteristics of control. So these are the points. See, power to obtain future economic benefits, ability to restrict access to those benefits to others is what we call control. So we will always have to assess whether we control a particular intangible asset or not for us to take that decision that whether this needs to be identified in a books of accounts or not. And with every discussion, there will be, I'll try to include at least one example per discussion, right? So that we also go thorough with the practical use cases. Now, let's say Bharat Gas Limited, a PSU, public sector undertaking, has a detailed training policy to train their staff on various operational, be it applicable laws, compliance, government regulations, as well as self-development, communication, public speaking for their staff development. Now, for many of us who are attending this session, I believe whenever we join a new company, there are a lot of trainings that we are supposed to go through, right? Onboarding trainings, and then there are yearly trainings as well in many organizations that we have to adhere to. They talk about about technical know-how that we are supposed to know, of our responsibilities, of certain laws, regulations, of how are we supposed to have a conduct in public when we represent a company, communication, public speaking, all these stuff. So these learnings, these materials, right, whether they can be capitalized or not. So see, let's do the assessment. That what is the assessment? Let's just apply the logics that we know instead of directly jumping to the answer. What is the first test? Recognition criteria, right? So intangible asset must be recognized only when the control and expected future benefits criteria is met. All right. So training provided does allow them to receive economic benefits in form of increase in improved performance. However, employees who are gaining that know-how, employees who are, getting benefit of that training, as I was constantly talking about this example, are not under some sort of control, right? The trainings are giving, making their employees the better employees. It is improving their economic benefits. But is it under a control of an entity? It is not actually under the control of this PSU Bharat Gas Limited, and that is why this won't be an intangible asset. Make sense? Now let's talk about another important aspect, which is uh, future economic benefits. Revenue from the sale of product or services. See, what is a future economic benefit? How do we figure out the intricacies around this? What are the kinds of future economic benefits? It can be revenue that we kind of get after selling products or services. It can be any other benefits resulting from the sale of the asset. It can be cost saving. Now, let's say I have developed a know-how, I have developed a software or some sort of technology that allows me to reduce the usage of electricity for my production functions. I have a particular know-how, I have a particular patent. By using that particular technology, I can reduce the amount of electricity that I use for my production. All right, let's apply the logics. Is it controlled by me? Of course, that is controlled by me. Can I sell that intangible asset to someone else, lease it, finance it? Of course, I can do that. Is it bringing some sort of economic benefit to me? Saving of cost is also economic benefit. Thereby, this will be considered as an intangible asset as well. Again, the same example that I was telling, that some sort of intellectual property which may reduce the cost, which may reduce the production cost, will be considered an intangible asset. All right, so here we go. We have an example, and I want you all to go through this example and try to answer yourself. So I'll be giving you, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes. We all of us have 3 to 4 minutes to go through this question and arrive at the answer by applying the concepts that we have learned so far. Instead of directly jumping to the answer based on our gut feeling of what we feel, let's apply the concepts that we have learned. All right. So Congo Limited, a supermarket chain, is planning to start new stores in several locations. Now, in order to promote these new stores, Congo Limited is carrying out regular advertisement through television. The company has paid INR 60 lakhs to an agency, out of which 14 lakh pertains to advertisement, and the balance 2 lakh pertains to advertisement next month. So for 14 lakhs worth of advertisement will be telecasted till December 2020, and the remaining 2 lakhs will be advertised the next month. Now, post December 31st, they have made an additional payment of 8 lakhs for the advertisements. Now, Congo Limited, based on third-party surveys and research, believes that the stores are going to be successful. and hence wants to capitalize these advertisement costs as an intangible asset. What do you guys think? Is this... So there are two things we have to check. We have to check control and we have to check future economic benefit. Now, future economic benefit is reasonably, easy to establish. But is there a control? See, you guys can say, sir, yes, there is a control. We can stop the advertisement. See, that is not a control. Control is, can I sell that advertisement to someone else? Will even someone buy that advertisement from me since that advertisement is made for me? See, if I had the broadcasting minutes with me, let's say instead of buying the slot for advertisement, I would have bought the advertising minutes, which under the contract I could have sold to anyone. Right? I am buying advertising rights for 1 hour, and I can further sell it on my own wish, the price that I choose for per minute, to some external companies or to whomsoever I wish. That would have been the control. Now the thing here is that this is not a control. So future economic benefits will flow. But what amount will I, kind of establish to it? What is the amount? Let's say I am like, okay, let's, recognize this as an intangible asset. Worth what? 100,000, 10 lakh, 1 crore, 50 lakh. What is the amount of this benefit? Now, in order for us to recognize an intangible asset, one of the key criteria is that the value should be reliably measured. Not just for intangible assets, this is also a criteria for property, plant, and equipment, that for us to initially recognize any asset in a books of accounts, we should be in the position to kind of have its value, which is reliably measurable. Right? That is why no company can recognize, for this very reason of value should be reliably measured, no company can recognize a self-generated goodwill as an intangible asset. I think you guys are aware of this. Let me repeat myself. Any goodwill that we see on any company's financial statement, on any company's balance sheet, is a goodwill that is acquired through purchase of a business, through business combination. No company can say, irrespective of how much market share they have, even if they have 100% market share, no company can say that there is an internally generated goodwill that I have and I will recognize that as an asset. Why? Because you cannot reliably measure the value of that goodwill. That is why every goodwill that you see on financial statement is a goodwill that is purchased in a business combination, in a merger and acquisition deal. All right. That is why these costs will be charged to income statement. So this is what is being discussed here. For the next year that we have paid in advance, it's a very simple accounting logic that this will be a prepaid expense. Make sense? Well, I hope it does. All right. Let's now discuss recognition of intangible assets, right? Once we have identified them that they need to be recognized, how do we recognize them? See, what is the general principle? Provided that an item meets the definition of an intangible asset, it should be recognized in the financial statement only if it is probable that the expected future economic benefits are attributable to the asset, will flow to the entity. भाई इस एसेट से हमें फायदा होगा फ्यूचर में, इसकी प्रोबेबिलिटी है. It is probable this particular intangible asset will help me with the economic benefits in the times to come. And there can be a value ascertained to it reliably. What is the cost? 10 rupees, 1,000 rupees, crore rupees, lakh rupees. What is the amount of that benefit that I can attribute to that particular asset? Right? It should be reasonably and reliably measured. And this particular requirement applies to cost incurred initially to acquire or internally generate an intangible asset, and those incurred subsequently to add, replace or service it. So ये जो requirement है, it is applicable to both these factors. ठीक है जी? Perfect. Let us move ahead. Just a second. Just a second. Just give me a second, guys. Just give me a second. Just all right. Good to go. So next we will be discussing about recognition of intangible asset में recognition कैसे करते हैं? What metrics do we follow? See, initially measured at cost. First and foremost आपका intangible asset cost पे measure होता है. Now, is it a separate acquisition? Is it a acquisition as a part of a business combination that I was telling you? Is it acquisition by government grant? Is it an exchange of an asset barter? Or is it an internally generated intangible asset? These are 5 different ways of acquiring an intangible asset. Let's talk about the most simple, most straightforward vanilla example, plain vanilla example of separate acquisition. I purchased a SAP license, right? Now, what will be the cost here? Fair value will be the cost that I'm paying, right? What will be the cost? The purchase price, any taxes which are non-refundable, any discounts, rebates, anything that I am paying to bring asset to its for its intended use. Purchase price, taxes which are not refundable, discounts, rebates, all these will be considered in figuring out the value, the cost, the initial recognition of intangible asset, right? Second is acquisition as part of business combination. Now, what is business combination? See, whenever, let's say, let's take a very basic example of one of some of the recent acquisitions that I wish to take example of. What is the most recent acquisition that I can recall? Let's say Tata acquired 1mg. So 1mg is a right diagnosis company which in which the blood tests can be done at our location, and the medicines and the entire pharmacy ecosystem is what Tata is what 1mg is. So initially that company was just called 1mg. That is what the name of the company was. Then Tata's acquired that company, and now that company is called Tata 1mg. Now when that acquisition would have happened, all the assets, now what kind of intangible assets would be 1mg having? They would be having an app of theirs, which is a very, very important intangible asset. The certain technologies, know-hows, a certain list of customers that they have made. They have made, let's say, some thousand or lakh customers all across the country. The list of the vendors that they have, or the exclusive contract they have with certain kind of such companies which are into the business of you doing this blood test and everything. So all these things which Tata acquired when they acquired 1mg will be initially measured at what? Fair value. Fair value is the price that you would pay. Now this is a separate standard which deserves a session of its own. But right now, since we are discussing fair value, let me tell you what fair value is. Fair value is the price that you would pay in an active market to acquire a asset or sell your liability. एक market में जहां पे there are multiple number of buyers, multiple number of sellers, where a transaction happens at a arm's length, right? The price that you would pay on a particular day to purchase an asset, or you will receive to settle off your liability, other way around, price you will get to sell your asset, or you will pay to settle off your liability, is what we call fair value. So we'll see the date of acquisition fair value, and accordingly the intangible asset will be measured. Now, many a times government gives grants. Now you will be like, sir, government give grants like land, which is property, plant and equipment, or a investment property for that matter, right? But many a times governments give grant in terms of license, right? When they want a particular industry to grow, so they give a license free of cost, that eventually this will be a paid basis license, but since you are the first mover in this industry, we are giving you this license for free or at a very subsidized cost. So under that, again, as per the accounting requirement of intangible assets and that of government grant in DS, it can be either valued at fair value or the actual value, which can be the nominal value or the basic amount that you have paid. Now, exchange of assets. Again, you will be like, sir, exchange of assets seems very, very rare, right? Where who will follow barter system nowadays? See, it does happen. Barter system gets followed. Let's say there's a company, it's an example. There's a telecommunication company. They want a 5G license. Now, 5G license is an intangible asset. Government of India does the auction for 5G license and you have to apply for it. You have to pay the fees and that's how you get the license to run your 5G services in the country. Now there's this telecommunication company which applied for it, got the 5G license, and let's say the government said that, okay, you have applied for so and so amount. Instead of giving us that amount, why don't you give us some sort of benefits, maybe in the form of, this is all example that I'm telling you, maybe in the form of internet connection, broadband connection to all the government offices across the country, 5G internet connection to all the government employees. These are just examples that I can come up with of how a barter transaction works. So whenever there is an exchange of an asset, right, fair value is considered of what am I receiving. If I am receiving a license, right? If I am receiving 5G license, me being the company receiving 5G license, that is an intangible asset for me. I will figure out its fair value. Now, how do we figure out fair value? You guys would be wondering, sir, what you told us fair value, that it is the price in the active market or a principal market for that matter. But how do we come to know? Oh, what if there is no market? That is why standard Ind AS 113 on fair valuation gives us 3 levels. Right? Level 1 inputs. Level 1 input mane that is exactly similar item is available in the market. Right? For example, you got a free SAP license. Right? You got a free SAP license. Or let's say you got a free 5G license from government, not free, exchange barter system, right? You are not paying in cash. You got a 5G license as a telecommunication company. Now, what value will you assign to it? You will see what other companies, what other telecommunication companies are paying for the similar 5G license. And that's how you can assess a fair value to. Right? There are level 1, level 2 inputs. Level 3 is when you don't have anything to compare, when you don't have any observable, inputs in the market. Then you apply some cash flow techniques, which again is a dedicated discussion. But I hope that this kind of settles your thoughts on how a fair value is arrived at. And last but not the least, internally generated intangible assets. Very, very important. Internally generated intangible assets are the assets which we have developed through in-house research and development. Now, there are certain principles, of course, which we'll be going through in the upcoming slides, which gives us the yardsticks of when can we capitalize, what value should we give to such capitalization of internally generated intangible assets. All right. Now, basic example, let's say TCS making a software for their internal use. A company like TCS, a company like Infosys, they make softwares and sell in the market outside, but for their own functioning also, they will be needing softwares. So what if they make a software internally for their own internal use? Let's say for timesheets. Very basic example. I think most of you might be aware of what a timesheet concept is, where the employees of the corporate, they have to kind of fill the codes on how many hours they worked on a particular project. So this requires a lot of tech, a lot of sync of tech and information and codes and whatnot. Let's say Wipro or TCS or Infosys or Tech Mahindra make a software internally for this use. How will they be first capitalizing it? If yes, what value will they be assigning? This is what we'll be learning in upcoming slides. Now let's have another example. I think we have had good discussion. Let's take another example. Now, India Rise Limited, another public sector undertaking, has identified and purchased an innovative technology. So they have identified a technology, purchase it, that will increase the efficiency of its manufacturing business. Make sense? Now, this is the cost of new technology. So the purchase price is 20 lakhs. The discount given by the supplier is 2 lakhs. Training cost for incurred for staff is 1 lakh. Initial testing of new technology is 70,000. Losses incurred while other parts of the plant shut down during testing and training is 50,000. So the overall cash outflow has been 20 lakh 20,000 rupees for this particular acquisition of technology. Now the question is, what cost can be capitalized as an intangible asset? एक बार आप लोग खुद ट्राई कीजिए, all of you try it. Just read it and try to think which all things will be included, and just give me a second. All right. See, cost of new technology is the purchase price that we are paying. So this deserves the place in our intangible asset cost. Trade discount by the supplier. Trade discount by the supplier is again a discount. We are not paying this, so ये cost से reduce होना चाहिए ideally. Training cost incurred for staff in new technology. Now I am expecting a right answer from all of you on this. We have discussed this quite a few number of times. That training cost incurred for staff in new technology. क्या staff को मैं control करता हूँ? Do I control the staff? This is the knowledge that they will get. No, I don't control this knowledge. That is why this will be exclusive, excluded. Initial testing of new technology. Now, if you guys can recall, when I was talking you about what cost to incur, I told cost to bring intangible assets for its intended use. Now, initial testing is required to bring asset to its intended use. That is why initial testing cost is allowed to be capitalized. Right? And losses incurred while other plants or parts of the plant shut down during testing and training. This is your opportunity cost loss. This should not be excluded in the cost capitalization cost. So basically, आपका third and fifth will be expensed off in the P&L, and your cost worth 18 lakh 70,000 will be capitalized as an intangible asset, and remaining 1 lakh 50,000, I believe, will be excluded. I hope this is clear. Right? हमें control. What are the three factors that we have to apply? Whether it brings us economic benefits or not, whether we control it or not, and is there a reasonably, reliable value that we can kind of associate with that particular asset? Only then are we allowed to capitalize it. All right. Let's go ahead. I'm just looking for some good example. All right. So there's a good example on exchange of assets, barter. Now, Good Group Limited has entered into an exchange transaction with Softech Limited. ठीक है जी? And has acquired a software in exchange for a telecom license. So क्या हुआ? They are like, give me telecom license, I will give you give me a software, I'll give you a telecom license in its barter or its return. The carrying value of the telecom license in the books of Good Limited is 50 lakhs. Carrying value of the software in the books of Softech Limited is 1 lakh, which is using the cost model. अब एक के पास 1 लाख वर्थ का सॉफ्टवेयर है, which they are changing for a 50 lakh rupees worth of telecom license. How will the entries be passed in the books of both the companies, both the entities? See, scenario one is where the fair value of the software is 52 lakhs and that of telecom license is 50 lakhs. ये थोड़ा कंफ्यूजिंग लगेगा अभी एग्जांपल, डोंट वरी, this might look a bit confusing, but this is very simple once we go to the treatment, because there is a lot of information given. Most of this need not be used also. Scenario 2 is the fair value of the software cannot be determined, but they are observable exchange transactions with the similar, identical means very same but might need some changes, right? So let's figure out entries कैसे होंगी, because we are accountants and we love general entries. भाई knowledge is good, entry क्या होगी books में, ठीक है? And third scenario is what if their value cannot be readily determinable, हमें value पता ही नहीं है क्या है. Let us get started with the entries. सो इन सिनेरियो वन देखो कैपिटलाइजेशन कैसे कैसे होगा, किस किस वैल्यू पे होगा। सिनेरियो वन पे सॉफ्टवेयर गुड ग्रुप्स के लिए क्या होगा कि फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ द एसेट गिवन। भाई मैंने एसेट जो दिया है, व्हाट वैल्यू हैव आई गिवन ऑफ वर्थ 50 lakhs, बिकॉज द सॉफ्टवेयर दैट आई एम गेटिंग आई डोंट नो इट्स फेयर वैल्यू, सो आई विल टेक द वैल्यू ऑफ एसेट गिवन। ठीक है। नाउ इन सेकेंड सिनेरियो वेयर दे नो द वैल्यू ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर दे आर गेटिंग, न्यू एसेट की फेयर वैल्यू दी हुई थी सेकंड सिनेरियो में, दैट द फेयर वैल्यू इज 49 lakh फॉर सिमिलर आइटम्स। आई एम गिविंग माय टेलीकॉम लाइसेंस फ्रॉम माय बुक्स वर्थ 50 lakh। I am crediting, I am removing this asset worth 50 lakhs. I am recognizing a new asset worth 49 lakhs because this is what the fair value is. What is difference between scenario 1 and scenario 2? In scenario 1, I did not know the fair value of software. That is why I considered the fair value of the item I am giving as the fair value of item that I am getting. But in this case, since I know the fair value of item that I am getting, I'll be using it. Any difference goes in the gain or loss. And in third case where we do not know the fair values of any of the things, what I'll be doing is whatever is the book value that I am giving of my asset is the value of new asset. No, you'll be like, sir, first entry or third entry में difference क्या हुआ? Difference नहीं हुआ because they were valued at fair value. जो book value थी वही fair value थी. Had book value and fair value been different, we would have used only book value that I am writing off from my books of accounts. In the case of third scenario, जहां पे मुझे fair value पता ही नहीं है, where I'm not even aware of what the fair value is. अब similar example, see what is the mirror image of this. Good groups ये कर रहा है तो soft tech limit क्या करेगा? Equal and opposite. Now see, if we go to scenario one, see, let me just go back to scenario one in the question. What did the scenario one said? Fair value की software that we are receiving of the software is 52 lakhs. Right? Fair value of telecom license was different and software was different. Now, what is Softtech Limited giving? They are giving their software worth 52 lakhs. Which जिसकी book value 1 lakh है, but fair value 52 lakhs है. So the value of thing that they're getting is 52 lakhs. The book value is 1 lakh. Difference goes in P&L. जो एसेट हम गिव अप कर रहे हैं उसकी फेयर वैल्यू पे रिकॉग्निशन होता है. सिनेरियो 2 इज जहां पे क्या होगा? फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ द एसेट एक्वायर्ड. एक्वायर क्या करा है? एसेट टेलीकम्युनिकेशन लाइसेंस, उसकी फेयर वैल्यू पता है. आई नो फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ टेलीकम्युनिकेशन लाइसेंस विच इज 49 lakhs. ठीक है भाई, सॉफ्टवेयर की बुक वैल्यू क्या? 1 lakh. दैट विल बी रिटर्न ऑफ. बुक वैल्यू विल बी रिटर्न ऑफ एंड द रिमेनिंग इज द प्रॉफिट ऑन एक्सचेंज. जब दोनों की ही वैल्यू नहीं पता तो वी यूज बुक वैल्यू ऑफ द एसेट आई एम गिविंग अप. I am giving up what? My software, which is worth 1 lakh in books of accounts. I will recognize telecommunication license at the same cost. आप if you guys wish to, आप इसका screenshot ले सकते हैं in entries का. See, it may look a bit overwhelming if you are reading this or studying this for the first time, but trust me, this is very, very, very easy once you apply the logic on how to recognize for exchange of assets. It's a bit technical example, but that's why I thought of taking this example up for the discussion. ठीक है? All right. Now cost to be expensed. We will be figuring out कि हमने अभी तक पढ़ा what all needs to be capitalized. Now let's see what are the costs which are needs to be expensed. Any internally generated goodwill, as I told you, any internally generated brands, publishing titles, mastheads, customer title lists, items which is internally generated, no, can't be capitalized. Because there is no cost that can be reasonably attributable. There is no reliable cost, reasonably reliable cost that can be attributed. Any research cost. You'll be like, sir, हमने तो research and development पढ़ना है अभी. Right. There are certain principles. उन principles, उन tests को apply करने से पहले वाली सारी cost is research cost, which needs to be expensed off. Only development cost, which is after the research cost, can be capitalized as an intangible asset. Any cost of setting up of your business, setting up a new or showroom, new office, any pre-opening advertisement, any expenditures, all are expensed off. Any training to any employees, any training material, because you don't control employees. Any advertisement costs, any restructuring costs. The factory was, let's say the factory of Tata Nano was shifted from West Bengal to Gujarat. The cost incurred there, was it allowed to be capitalized no matter how huge the cost is? No. Some sort of tax benefits might be allowed on those costs that are incurred, but from accounting viewpoint, this will be a non-capitalizing cost to be expensed off in P&L in the year of expenditure if Ind AS is applied. Makes sense? Makes sense. Now comes the topic that I believe most of you have been waiting for: internally generated intangible assets. All right. Now, internally generated intangible assets include research. There are two aspects to this. One is a research phase, another one is a development phase. And third phase is if it is not clear if it is a research phase or is it a development phase. If you are not sure of being into a development phase, then you better expense it off. You have to be very sure that the phase that you are in is development phase. Only then can you capitalize it as an intangible asset, provided the recognition criteria is fulfilled. देखिए, अगर आप research क्या होता है, there is a lot of hit and trial involved. Let's understand this from the viewpoint of a medicine being, a pharmaceutical company is making a medicine. ठीक है जी? Now they are doing research on that medicine. They are doing all sorts of research, hits and trial runs, and scientists are doing some sort of experiments on the mouse, the in lab tests and everything. But yeah, they are still to arrive at the final formula. All these costs are research cost, expensive. When the formula is derived for a medicine, when that formula gets a note from Indian Medical Association and all the respective bodies which are supposed to give it a go ahead, all the government bodies, that okay, this formula is allowed, only then the development phase starts. And mere having it in the development phase is not enough. The recognition criteria must also be fulfilled. Right? What is that research criteria? That we'll be figuring out in our upcoming slides. ठीक है, वो हम अभी next to next slide में पढ़ेंगे. So examples of research activities are, see, जिसमें new knowledge आती है, activities aimed at obtaining new knowledge, evaluation and final selection of research findings, alternative materials, devices, formulation, design, evaluation, selection, right? Improved materials. So basically, this is a lot of hit and trial. We are yet to arrive at our final decision of what we will pick out of the things that we have come across. Development phase, on the contrary, is you start designing, constructing, pre-production testing, prototypes, models, right? पायलट प्लान आ जाता है जब. These are all development phases. So again, there is no exhaustive list in the standard. All these things are research and all these things are development. This is a matter of judgment. This is a matter of judgment of you as a financial reporter or auditor, right? How you see a particular thing in a particular industry. That is how it is decided, whether it's a research or a development. But if there is a doubt if it's a research or development, it is, answer me, I can hear you. It is research. And it will be expensed off instead of getting capitalized as an intangible asset. Now, अगर हम अपने फ्लो चार्ट पे वापस चलें तो उसमें क्या था? There were certain conditions mentioned that certain recognition criteria needs to be fulfilled. What are those recognition criteria? Let's figure out. intangible asset arising from development phase should be recognized only if entity can demonstrate the following things. Technical feasibility of completing the intangible asset so that it will be available for the use. Let's take the example of medicine and let's go point by point. I have developed the formula, right? I have developed the formula, but one of the items required or one of the elements required to make that medicine is found on planet Mercury. Of course, it's a hypothetical example, but I'm just telling you that though I have the formula, though I have the prototype, but it is technically not possible for me to develop it to a stage where that asset will be available for use or sale. Can't capitalize. And not one, all these conditions should be satisfied. So if it is not feasible technically, can't be capitalized. Intention to complete the intangible asset and use or sell it. Let's say I developed the formula, but it is so expensive to sell it and there are market alternatives available which are cheaper. So does it make sense for me to incur production cost and sell it in the market? Let's say I was doing some research. I came to a conclusion, okay, that by this formula, I can make this medicine. And then I realized that the formula that I have made, the medicine that it's getting, kind of made here is actually so expensive and there are cheaper market alternatives available. So can't capitalize it because I'll be not completing it. The formula that I have derived is something that is cheap, technically feasible, effective, but the Indian Medical Association or the relevant bodies of the government have not given me license to make medicine out of it. I don't have the ability to sell that. I don't have the ability to use that formula. Can't capitalize. Intangible asset future economic benefits देगा ही नहीं. Again this point is regarding the cash feasibility basically. The cost incurred will be more than the value that I'll be receiving. Can't capitalize. It has to has technical, financial, other resources so that it can be developed and sold in the market. And of course, is सबके बावजूद, in spite of all these things being present, what is the value? किस amount पे recognize करूंगा? 10, 100, 1000, lakh, crore, what? That is reliably measured, ability to measure reliably the expenditure. All these points when put together are in place, only then can we say that the intangible, that the cost of development, internal development of an asset can be capitalized as an intangible asset. I hope this is clear. I'm giving you guys a minute's time to read this, what is available on the screen, all these points. And you can, of course, keep parking your queries, right? And I was giving you this example, ये pharma industry का मैंने यहाँ पे call out भी कर रखा है, since these costs are evaluated significantly in pharma industry. ये evaluation सबसे ज़्यादा pharma industry में होता है. So you guys can, if at all you guys have any query, which I believe होंगी थोड़ी बहुत, you guys can please keep parking to it, and towards the end of the session, we shall be taking up them for discussion. Now here's a question, a case study for you guys. I know you guys are smart and you will come out with the right answers. Pharma Limited is developing a new drug that has successfully completed phase 1 and 2 of the clinical testing. So phase 1, phase 2 ho gaya. The drug is now in the last stage for phase 3 testing. Regulatory filings have been carried out and approval is pending. Management believes it will be favorably treated by the regulatory authorities because it means strong unmet demand. The entity also has created a production facility for manufacturing the processed drug. आप मुझे बताइए, can this be capitalized? क्या ये डेवलपमेंट कॉस्ट कैपिटलाइज हो सकती है? सोचिए. सी इसमें क्या होता है ना, a yes will also be right answer, a no will also be a right answer. Let's say you are like कि third phase अभी तक complete नहीं हुआ है. What if we are not able to get into the third phase? Right? can't capitalize. Or you can be of the opinion, see, phase one हो गया है, phase two हो गया है, which are the tougher phases. Phase three is towards the end. There is a demand in the market. Phase one, phase two is completed, and basis your past estimate, basis your past dealing with the the regulatories, you feel the phase one, phase two अगर हो जाता है तो phase three तो हो ही जाता है. If that is a judgment, you can capitalize. So as I told you, there is no thumb rule, there is no uh, line which separates this. Research and development में judgment involve होगा ही होगा. The judgment will be there in research and development, right? So it depends. In this, if a management thinks, if a management is adamant, no, we are very specific, we are very sure that this can be capitalized, then the auditor will have no rights to deny it if that is how the industry practice is also there. क्योंकि ये this particular regulatory filing will not be followed just by a particular company. So how industry performs, how are other competitors performing, what is has been the past trend, considering all these things, the judgment is formed. Right, sir? Now let us take a couple of more examples. Or maybe before we go to examples, let's take a key concept, some key concepts as well. Now, अभी तक हमने क्या पढ़ा है? अभी तक we have studied the initial recognition. By what is an intangible asset, when it should be identified, what value should it be identified. Now, once we have identified what is an intangible asset, we have identified that yes, this needs a place in our financial statements. We have got the value for initial recognition, which is reliably estimable. Now it is in our books of accounts. Now, how is its journey going to be in our balance sheet? Subsequent measurement कैसे होगा? So for subsequent measure, there is a cost rule. There is a way out of doing it is through cost. जो भी आपकी cost है, आप any amortization, if there is any amortization that you subtract, ideally it should be amortization and not again amortization. It should be not amortization twice, right? So this is cost model. What is fair value model? Then this is revaluation model. यहाँ पे box error आ गया है. I'll just correct this. This is, or maybe let me correct it right now only. Just give me a second. Let me share the screen as well. Hmm. This ideally should be impairment. Instead of amortization twice, it should be impairment. Or maybe we can move ahead and I can take up this later. Right. ये amortization नहीं होना चाहिए सेकंड में. This should be impairment. Since we are discussing impairment in our upcoming discussion, it has got double by mistake. But you guys understand that there's a cost model, there's a revaluation model. We can follow either of these models that we wish to for subsequent recognition. All right. Let me see if we have some more examples around, or should I go to intangibles, or maybe we can discuss a few more important concepts. Right, this is very important concepts in intangible assets. So guys, basically my yeah. Basically, the standard deck that I'm sharing has many examples, but this is a deck that I use for 4-hour session or a 6-hour session. So I have to just hop off some of the use cases that I have, considering the time limitation we have. But do not worry, all the critical concepts are being covered here in the discussion. So entity shall assess whether useful life of an intangible asset is finite or indefinite. Now, what do we mean here? This means that whether the life of your intangible asset, let's say you have a license for, let's say Jio has a broadcasting rights for IPL match for 5 years, right? It's a finite life. Who can think of an example of an asset with an indefinite life? Intangible asset with an indefinite life. Think about it. Let me just look for the electricity light on my face, which just got off. Right. So, who can think of the example regarding intangible asset with indefinite life? You all use it on daily basis. All of you use it on daily basis. I can hear some noise. Apps. The apps of a company, they do not have any life. भाई ऐप तो बनी हुई है. As long as it is hosted on right. So websites, apps have indefinite life. Now for intangible assets which have finite life, useful life उनकी वैसे figure out होती है. Finite means limited, 5 years, 4 years, 10 years, and accordingly they are amortized over their useful life. For intangible life, intangible, अब उसमें क्या होगा जब life ही नहीं है, how will you amortize it? Right? How will you amortize it? If there is no life, fixed life, in that case, they are just looked for if there is any impairment study. तो वो impairment करते हैं. And indefinite does not mean infinite, which is very correct. It's not infinite, but you can't definitely say it's 4 years, 5 years, or 10 years. So वो amortize नहीं होता है. That is only tested for impairment annually. So all those intangible assets which have indefinite lives are tested for impairment annually. इसके बारे में हम पढ़ेंगे in next 5 minutes in detail of what is a impairment study. What are the factors of impairment? Abhi we are studying about intangible assets. Okay. Now, before we move to the other topic, let's just talk about how do we retire our intangible assets. भाई हमने क्या सीखा? Recognition principles, initial recognition, subsequent recognition. Now, just like everything in the life, disposal हर चीज का होता है life में. So is with intangible asset. अगर कोई intangible asset is getting retired or disposed of, how is that asset recognized? When it is sold. If it is not sold, when there is no future economic benefit expected out of it, it has served its purpose. You de-recognize the value from your books of accounts. Whatever is left, if you have received some money, if there is any difference, is recognized as gain or loss in your profit and loss statement. However, any gain on sale of intangible asset is never revenue. It is always shown as other income. It is not classified under revenue, but under other income. All right. Perfect. Now there are certain disclosure requirements. Disclosure क्या होता है? That of course you guys are very smart, you know what disclosures are. That whenever we make financial statements for our company, there are a lot of disclosure requirements, specifically in India, which are very important from compliance viewpoint, from sharing the relevant information with the stakeholders of the financial statement, because disclosures do play a very important role in explaining the figures, the terms, the value, right? So intangible assets related disclosures are whether the useful lives are indefinite or finite, and if finite, what is that rate used? How is the amortization method used? Right? What is the gross carrying value amount? Is there is any accumulated amount? Accumulated का क्या मतलब होता है? Let's say 100 is the value of my intangible asset. Instead of reducing the value of the intangible asset, I'm parking that depreciation in an accumulated depreciation account. right? If there is any profit and loss में कोई amortization का item included है, reconciliation of what was the opening balance of my intangibles, what is the closing balance, how opening balance of 100 has turned into 150, have I purchased something, have I kind of amortized something, have I impaired something, has the value, fair value increased? The reasoning around it is also required to be disclosed in financial statements. Right. So with this, we close our discussion on intangible assets for the time being. And now for the last quarter of discussion, I'll be taking a relatively easier discussion of impairment. See, impairment का मतलब क्या होता है? अच्छा, before going to impairment, let's just follow the pathway that we follow. First, let's talk about the scope. Now you guys are aware of how the session goes. First, we talk about the scope, then we talk about a few technical definition, and then we jump to a lot of use cases and case studies to understand. So impairment जो है, it is applicable to all the assets except inventory, except contract assets and and assets arising from revenue contracts, deferred tax asset. Why are they outside the scope? क्योंकि इनके लिए dedicated standards हैं, उसमें ये इनका dedicated treatment दिया हुआ है. Employee benefits, financial assets, biological assets. Biological assets is something again which is a upgrade from our Indian GAAP in terms of guidance available. This is a bit additional discussion. So जो हमारे Indian GAAP हैं, which most of us would have studied while graduating, or I believe, I'm not sure of the composition, but I believe most of us would have studied this in our high school and graduation and initial CPT, IPCC days, if there are chartered accountants in this in the viewers. So उसमें biological assets पे guidance नहीं थी. Now in India, we have a dedicated guidance on biological assets. Basic example, a company running a milk business. Now the cattles that they have, are biological assets for them. So unki accounting is given in Ind AS 41. So we better follow that and not general accounting given in for impairment of assets. Right. Similarly, last point जो मैंने आपको explain किया था was under this non-current assets held for sale. Right. So on and so forth. These are all outside the scope of intangible asset. अब impairment, intangible नहीं, sorry, impairment. Impairment होता क्या है? Impairment मतलब impairment means a significant fall. Right. A significant reduction in the value of amount of that asset when the carrying amount of the asset exceeds its recoverable amount. अब सी इम्पेयरमेंट का डिस्कशन तो चलने को 2 घंटे भी चल सकता है. इट कैन गो ऑन फॉर 2 hours, बट let me just give you a very simple way of understanding this, and I want all your attention, guys, with me. I believe the attention was still with me, but I'm just giving a heads up. देखो, impairment का formula है. When is an asset said to be impaired? When the carrying value, मतलब जो book value है, that is more than the recoverable amount. किसी asset की book value is more than the recoverable amount. What is recoverable amount? Recoverable amount is higher of value in use or fair value less cost to sell. आगे पढ़ेंगे इस बारे में. See, एक business, you all are into running businesses or working for your or industries, right? Or students. I'll ask you a very basic question. Let's say you have a asset. आपके पास कोई भी asset है. What are the 2 benefits that you can take out of it? आप उसके 2 ही benefits ले सकते हो larger bracket में. One is you can sell that asset. उस asset को बेच दोगे, you will sell that asset, receive the amount. One is you can use that asset for services, for goods, for renting it out, for leasing it out, for using it in your business. 2 ही चीज कर सकते हैं हम asset के साथ. Either we can sell them to get the benefit or we can use it. What would a sane person or a businessman who wants maximum benefit will do? क्या करेंगे? बेच देंगे या यूज करेंगे? All of you answer me. I can hear some people saying बेच देंगे, we'll sell it. See, it depends what has more value, right? If selling has more value than using it, then I'll sell it. If using gives me more value, fair value of the usage that will generate benefit in upcoming years, if that is more than selling it, I will use it. Recoverable amount क्या होता है? This is available in the deck in the upcoming recs. What is recoverable amount? Higher of fair value less cost to sell. अगर अभी ही बेच दिया तो नेट क्या मिलेगा? हायर ऑफ फेयर वैल्यू लेस कॉस्ट टू सेल और वैल्यू इन यूज मतलब अपकमिंग इन यूजेज की फेयर वैल्यू टुडे। इन दोनों में से जो भी हायर है दैट इज कंपेयर्ड विद द कैरिंग अमाउंट, एंड इफ दिस अमाउंट is less than the carrying amount, the book value, I will have to bring the book value down of my asset to the recoverable amount. अगर ये conceptually समझ में आ गया है, good. If no, don't worry, I have slides dedicated for this where you can see all this what I'm telling you. But impairment means significant reduction in the value of the asset. Now, this significant reduction can be due to external as well as internal indicators. How will we know कि impairment check करना है? See, for certain assets like goodwill or for internally generated or for intangible assets with indefinite life, as we just studied it, impairment testing annually की जाती है, irrespective of the factors. However, for other intangible assets और फॉर टेंजिबल एज वेल, क्योंकि इंपेयरमेंट टेंजिबल पे भी अप्लाई होता है, इंडिकेटर्स होते हैं एक्सटर्नल और इंटरनल. लेट्स फिगर आउट व्हाट आर दीज इंडिकेटर्स. नाउ व्हाट आर एक्सटर्नल इंडिकेटर्स? एक्सटर्नल इंडिकेटर्स आर व्हेन देयर इज अ सिग्निफिकेंट डिक्लाइन इन द एसेट्स वैल्यू, जो मैं आपको बता रहा हूं. नाउ what is happening that because of, let's say, AI आ गया है, right? Because of AI, there is a significant decline in some assets value. Or biggest, these are all external indicators. Let me tell you one very specific example. There was this BS6 vehicle thing, the pollution thing, if you guys are aware, कि जो engines BS6 से ऊपर हैं, only they will be allowed in certain part of the country to curb pollution. उससे क्या हुआ था, जो the cars with the engine which was less than BS6, उनकी value significantly decline हो गई थी. But I believe that law got quashed. We are studying here. We are just taking those examples to understand the concept, right? So there are certain government policies. There are certain things which significantly declines the value of the asset. Then it is an indicator of impairment, an external one. A significant adverse change in the market. भाई कोई ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी आ गई which has like broken the ecosystem, or there is such good amount of value available at such a cheap price that वो एकदम खत्म ही हो गया. For example, keypad phones, right? Now, do you see any keypad phones, no matter how good they are? भाई टच स्क्रीन आया मार्केट and it was so impactful. और मे बी वॉच, स्मार्ट वॉचेस के बाद जनरल वॉच का मार्केट सडनली कम हो गया है. दीज आर ऑल एग्जांपल्स, राइट? एक्सटर्नल इंडिकेटर्स. और क्या एक्सटर्नल इंडिकेटर होता है? व्हिच देयर आर चेंजेस इन द इंटरेस्ट रेट व्हिच सिग्निफिकेंटली इंपैक्ट्स द रिटर्न ऑफ द कंपनीज एसेट, एंड जो कंपनी के नेट एसेट्स हैं वो उसकी मार्केट कैपिटलाइजेशन से ही ज्यादा आगे चले गए हैं. दीज आर ऑल एग्जांपल्स ऑफ एक्सटर्नल इंडिकेटर्स ऑफ इम्पेयर. Now let's see internal indicators. Asset got burnt, asset got damaged, asset got theft, damage हो गया है asset का, right? I am discontinuing a particular business, so the assets related to that business. Asset is not being used only, it is becoming idle. I am planning to dispose of that asset at a very cheap rate because of market conditions, right? जो एसेट अभी तक मुझे इनडिफिनेट लगता था यूजफुल लाइफ, अब उसकी यूजफुल लाइफ फाइनाइट हो गई है. Like many, for example of this, many clothing brands which were having both website and app initially, they reduced their website. They do not allow shopping on website anymore, and they're only on app business, a few of them. तो पहले क्या था, ऐप एंड वेबसाइट बोथ वर इंटेंजिबल एसेट्स विद इनडेफिनिट यूजफुल लाइफ, पता ही नहीं था कब तक चलेगी. बट देन दे मेक अ कॉन्शियस कॉल ऑफ यू नो डायरेक्टिंग एंटायर सेल्स जस्ट थ्रू ऐप एंड वेबसाइट पे नहीं. आप उनकी वेबसाइट के लिंक पे भी जाओगे तो दे टेक यू टू द ऐप डाउनलोड लिंक. So that is where websites became a impaired asset from having an indefinite useful life to having a definite useful life of, let's say, 6 months or a year. Right? So these are all indicators of internal indicators of impairment. This was the concept that I was telling. What is a recoverable amount? Higher of the fair value less cost to sale and its fair value in use. I'll try to explain this in Excel instead of through PPT because this will be easier to understand in Excel in my understanding. Give me a minute to just open my Excel. हाँ जी, देखिए, this is very simple and I wish that after this session you will never have to mug up the formula for impairment. It is pure common sense. The book value, which is also called as the carrying value of your asset, जो बुक्स में वैल्यू आ रही है, जो कैरिंग वैल्यू है, is 100. Now what are we doing? We are testing for impairment. Testing for impairment. ठीक है, बुक वैल्यू 100 है. आई हैव टू कंपेयर इट विद रिकवरेबल अमाउंट. फिर रिकवरेबल अमाउंट का मतलब क्या होता है? रिकवरे स्पेलिंग थोड़ी सी गलत हो रही है, प्लीज बेयर विद दैट. हाँ, रिकवरेबल अमाउंट. व्हाट कैन आई रिकवर आउट ऑफ दैट एसेट? व्हाट कैन आई रिकवर आउट ऑफ दिस एसेट? 1 2 2a, or maybe let me write just a here. What is a? A means 2 का सब एलिमेंट. Now what is recoverable amount? My fair value less cost to sell, which means if I sell this in the market today, what will be the net proceeds that I will get? Right? What will be the net proceeds that I will get? Let's say if I sell it in the market today, I will get 90 rupees. So I will sell it for 95 and I will sell it for 95 in the market, and 5 will be the cost to sell it. Maybe I'll have to go to the market, I'll have to list it somewhere, I have to pay some brokerage, whatever. I'll be able to sell it in 90. B is value in use. Value in use का मतलब होता है, it means if I keep on using this asset for upcoming years, it will give me some economic benefits. उन economic benefits की fair value. Right? Let's say 1, 2, 3. Very basic example. I will use this asset for upcoming 3 years. It will give me a benefit of worth, let's say 30 in year 1, or maybe let it be 50 in year 1, 30 in year 2, and 10. Or maybe let's keep it this way, 40, 20, and 10. ठीक है. My required rate of return is 10%. भाई मेरे को अगर लोन लेना है मार्केट से, I get it at 10%. My internal rate of return, that the basis I generate revenue in my business, is 10%. So I will bring its present value. Wait, what is the present value? It will give me 40 years after 1 year. What is its present value today? 1 divided by 1.10. This is how we do fair value factors to the power after 1 year. And this is 1. Similarly, I will do for 3 years. ये मैं फेयर वैल्यू निकाल रहा हूं. बेसिक है. दिस इज EMI accounting. 1 rupee value, if I get rupee 1 after 1 year, its value today is 0.90. ये वही है. If I get rupee 40 after 1 year, its value today is 40 into 0.90. Similarly, I'll be dragging this formula and मैं हर बार क्या करूंगा, ईयर बढ़ा दूंगा बस, for year 2, year 3. This means 1 rupee I am getting after 3 years is worth 0.75 today. Present value निकाली भाई. What am I calculating? I am calculating value in use. कि इस business, इस asset को use करके what is the amount of revenue or what is the amount of benefit that I am generating. Sum कर दिया. 60 आ रहा है value in use, 60.45 in our example. अब any sane businessman वो क्या करेगा? Will he value in use or will he fair value less cost to sell? भाई whatever gives more benefit. So recoverable amount is higher of this two, A or B, because this is common sense, right? This is common sense. What will you do? Which gives you more return? So your fair recoverable amount becomes higher of this two, which is 90. Now आपकी book value है 100, आपका recoverable amount है 90. You can only recover 90 rupees out of this asset जिसकी book value 100 आ रही है books में. Do you need to impair? Yes, you need to impair. What will be the impairment? Impairment will be excess of book value over recoverable amount. Recoverable amount से कितना ऊपर है book value? 10, which means 10 is the amount you need to impair. Entry क्या होगी इसकी? Since we are accountants, we love general entries, right? Impairment account debit to asset. To asset. कितने से? 10 से debit, 10 से credit. As simple as that. This is your impairment. Right? We can just keep on technically discussing the internal factors, the external factors, the reversal of impairment, right? This is the concept of impairment. All right. Let me see if I have any queries. So there are certain queries which are shared by Rahul sir. Let me see those queries. So I'm taking queries one by one. ठीक है, मैं एक बार अपने presentation deck को share कर लेता हूँ.
Sir, I can read out the questions if that helps.
Sure. That would be helpful.
Sure. So the first question is, although this was covered in your presentation, but there's an example linked to it, so I'll just read it out. How should we account for assets that have both physical and intangible elements? For example, if a publishing company acquires the copyright of an e-learning course delivered on a CD, where the CD is tangible but the real value lies in the copyright, should this be recognized under Ind AS 16 or Ind AS 38?
Right. So I'll just quickly answer that. So the example that I shared was of a basic example of a laptop that you purchase. So let's take the laptop example and then relate it with this particular example. The laptop you purchase has a Microsoft Office in it, right? Have you ever seen any company capitalize Microsoft Office as an intangible asset? No. Why? Because here comes judgment. Here comes substance over form. Your intention of buying that laptop is not just to get your Microsoft Office. It's the physical product that you have bought, which has certain softwares. Example, the mobile you buy, right? Android is what? Android is an operating system. It's an intangible asset. Have you ever seen any company, if it has 1,000 cell phones for its employees, recognize Android separately? No. The intent is there not to buy, IO operating system or Android. It's to buy the phone, which has a software. Now, similarly, the e-learning, is the intent to stack up the CDs and use it as storage device, or is the intent to access that learning? What derives the value for that CD? The learning in it. Is learning tangible? No, it's intangible. So this will be an intangible asset.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
So the second question that has come in says that if an entity exchanges one intangible asset for another, and the fair value of the asset given up can be measured reliably, but the fair value of the asset received cannot be, at what value should the entity recognize the new intangible asset? Further, would any gain or loss arise from such a transaction?
Right. So if a fair value of asset given up can be measured reliably, but the fair value of, so let me just of the asset given up can be measured reliably, but the fair value of, if you are not able to recognize the value of asset that you have received, but the value of the asset that you are giving up, then you will take up that fair value. Now, because that is more reliable. Now the asset you are giving up, उसी fair value पे आप new asset को account for कर रहे हो, so there is no reason for a difference to arise, right? So there will not be any resulting gain or loss. This will be just a kind of an entry where one asset went out of your books, another asset came, but the fair value remained the same. However, there can be a gain or loss if the asset that you are giving up was valued on book value or on cost, which was different than fair value. Let's say आपकी book value 50 थी, but the fair value was 70, and you are reliable of the value. Then the new asset that you have acquired will be accounted at 70. The asset that is going out of your books is worth 50 in your books. 20 is your gain or loss on such transaction. All right.
Sure, sir. Okay. The next question says that if a company has acquired broadcasting rights for 5 years with an option to renew, however, there is no evidence that the renewal is likely to be granted, how should the entity assess the useful life of these rights for amortization?
All right. So, rights are which you can exercise. And in this case, even if you had a reasonable certainty that you will go ahead and renew, even in that case, it will require a lot of judgment and assessment to have useful life beyond 5 years. For your question, the useful life will be just 5 years. It's not the option to renew is irrevocable. Let's say I have the option to renew it and the other entity cannot deny. Let's say the other entity cannot deny. If I say I will renew it, they have to agree with me. That is where the question comes of assessing if it is more than 5 years. If the option to renew is on both the entities to renegotiate and then it can be renewed, in those circumstances, we'll be just taking 5 years as the useful life of the intangible asset. All right. So this is regarding the answer. Should we go move to the next question?
Yes, sir. Sure. The next question says that can an entity continue to use the most recent detailed calculation of recoverable amount from a prior period for its impairment assessment in the current period?
Can an entity continue to use the most recent detailed calculation of a recoverable amount from a prior period item, I believe. So this, I believe, what you're trying to intend is that there was a prior period adjustment. Can I use that input into considering for current period? Yes, any input which is relevant for the particular that the assessment can be used. So there is no as such, a guidance or a yes or a no on what inputs to be used. They have to be relevant for that particular period, and your auditors should be fine with this. Again, this is a matter of judgment, but the answer of your question is yet it can be used if it is relevant for that assessment.
Okay, sir. Another question, sir, is under Ind AS 36, in which cases must an entity test an asset for impairment, even if there are no indications of impairment?
For goodwill and for intangible assets which has indefinite life, like app or websites. These are the two factors where irrespective of the factors, you have to test annually for impairment.
Okay, sir. The next question is, if a PSU has an asset that is impaired due to government regulations, for example, a scheme was discontinued, how is the impairment loss recognized and disclosed?
So it will follow the same guidelines that we have studied so far. The impairment will be checked where the carrying value will be checked for recoverable amount. And since government regulation is one of the key external factors, we will be impairing our asset as per the calculation that we have learned. And the disclosures will definitely have the reason that this asset is kind of reduced in the impaired by this and this amount owing to the changes in government regulation and all these policies. So this will all be disclosed, but the process of impairment loss will be as what it would be for any other particular case.
Sure, sir. I think these were the questions we had from our participants.
I think there's one more question I can see on my screen. So it says, in PSUs, we often have large infrastructure products with significant development cost. How should these costs be assessed for capitalization as intangible assets under Ind AS 38? All right. So, sir, sorry, ma'am, for this particular question, see, the rule remains the same. The application of knowledge remains the same. If it is a development cost, first you have to figure out that whether it's a research or a development. If it is a development, then are all those factors getting fulfilled? It is technically possible. It is financially reasonable. You have the required approvals. You have the intent to sell it in the market, right? All those factors, if they are getting satisfied basis your own judgment, and of course then how your auditor sees that, you can capitalize them. So I think Ashna, we are done with the questions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think that's about it. This is the discussion. I really hope that you guys found this uh, really helpful. I would like to thank Ashna for moderating this session so wonderfully well, and to Rahul, sir, for doing the admin part very diligently, and of course to Accounting Standard Board ICI for making sure that we conduct such sessions for the benefit of us all. So that's from mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your valuable insights. I think it was very insightful for all of us, and especially the linkages with the practical life examples simplified the topic and made the entire interaction so much more meaningful. Before we bring the session to an end, just to extend a sincere gratitude again to Shalabh sir for coming in, giving his time to
Thank
the
you.
topic, and for giving his guidance on the topic in such a detailed manner. Also, thank you to our esteemed chairman of Accounting Standards Board, CA Sanjeev Singhal sir, Vice Chairman CA Vishal Doshi sir, for bringing the expertise series to life, ensuring our members and stakeholders benefit from the knowledge sharing. Special thanks to Alok Garg sir, who gave me the opportunity to be a part of this session. It has been an honor. And special thanks to all the participants for joining and showing such a keen interest and active participation throughout this webinar. Thank you for the continued support and for being a part of the Accounting Standards Board's efforts to promote knowledge dissemination. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.